आवाज आला फक्त असंच काही प्रॉब्लेम नाही ना. इंट्रोडक्शन
Yes, Disha. You can start, Disha.
Yes, ma'am. Before we begin, I would like to request all the participants to kindly mute their mics and drop the questions in the chat box. Successful leaders see the opportunities in every difficulty rather than the difficulty in every opportunity. A very good afternoon to everyone, respected principal ma'am, our esteemed guests, all the teachers, faculty members, and students. I, Disha Paliwal, welcome you on the behalf of Dr. D.Y. Patil Law College, Pimpri, Pune, to the guest lecture on practical experience in labor administration, and we are privileged to have among us one of the pioneer, Mr. T.S. Jadhav sir, to give us an insight out on the topic. I would like to invite Neil Pede to give a brief introduction about sir. Neil? Neil, you are on mute. Kindly unmute yourself.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So, very good afternoon, everyone. Our today's guest, Mr. Dhanraj Shivajirao Jadhav, who is currently working as an Assistant Labour Welfare Commissioner at Central Ordnance Depot, Dehu Road, Pune. He has an experience of working as a Labour Enforcement Officer at Mumbai, Pune, Solapur, and Goa, and as an Assistant Labour Commissioner at Cochin. As a labor enforcement officer, Sir has performed the duties of an inspector under labor laws, which included inspecting various work sites, offices of central government organizations and its contractors, mainly railway, CPWD, banks, insurance companies, airports, major ports, mines, and autonomous bodies under the under the control of central government. He has also filed prosecution against defaulting employers and contractors before judicial magistrate. He has filed various claim cases under Minimum Wages Act and Payment of Wages Act. He has also performed as a conciliation officer under Industrial Dispute Act, performed the duties of quasi-judicial nature under Payment of Gratuity Act as controlling authority, also worked as a licensing and registering officer under Contract Labor Act, ISME Act, and BOCW Act. As an Assistant Labour Welfare Commissioner, Sir has performed functions of welfare officer, resolving disputes between administration and workers of Central Ordnance Depot, coordinating functions of Works Committee and Joint Consultative Machinery and Grievance Redressal Committee. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. And without further ado, I would like to request sir to address today's gathering. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible to you, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then let me start. As introduced to me by Mr. Neil, I was labor enforcement officer, joined in a central labor service of Government of India, Ministry of Labor and Employment, New Delhi. So thereafter, I worked at various places, as explained by him. So I'm not now spending time in that. We'll go to the subject straight away. I would like to explain you the historical background of labor policy and labor laws. The India's labor policy is mainly based on labor laws. The labor laws of independent India derive their origin, inspiration, and strength partly from the views expressed by important nationalist leaders like Lokmanya Tilak was also a trade union leader. Mahatma Gandhi was also a trade union leader. Lala Lajpat Rai was president of ITAC. Then during the days of national freedom struggle, partly from the debates of Constituent Assembly and partly from the provisions of the Constitution and the International Convention and recommendations of International Labour Organization. The constitutional provisions, the relevance of the dignity of human labor and the need for protecting and safeguarding the interest of the labor as human being has been enshrined in the chapter 3 of Article 16, 19, 23 and 24 and chapter 4, Article 39, 41, 42, 43, 43A and 54. These are all related to the human dignity, equal treatment to all citizens, their protecting of their wages, workers' participation in management, and this all related to which are reflected in our labor laws. The United Nations and International Labour Organization, the labor laws were influenced by important human rights and the conventions and standards that have emerged from the United Nations. This includes the right to work of one's choice, right against discrimination, prohibition of child labor, just and human condition of work, social security, protection of wages, redressal of grievances, right to organize and form trade unions, collective bargaining, and participation in management. Our labor laws have all significantly influenced by deliberations of the various sessions of the Indian Labour Conference and the International Labour Conference of the International Labour Organization. You know that all these labor laws having background of that commissions, the government has formed some national commissions on labor. This labor legislation are mostly shaped by and influenced by these recommendations of various national commissions and committees. Like first National Commission on Labor was of 1969 under the chairmanship of Justice Rajendra Gadkar. If you could find, really it is worth document. If you could find and having interest in reading all these things, these commission reports are very useful. That will give you the basic idea of the all provisions of the labor laws. Then National Commission on Rural Labor, then second National Commission on Labor under chairmanship of Mr. Ravindra Verma. He was member of Parliament, and united that National Commission for Enterprises in the unorganized sector. These commissions have given valuable inputs and advices so that labor laws can be made worker friendly and industry friendly as well, because there should be coordination between workers and industry. Then only the end result of manufacturing process or services will come out. That's why these recommendations of the committee or commission are very much important. Then contribution of judiciary. You know that every law enacted is always challenged in the court. So court, by examining that law, whether it is in consonance with constitution or not, it will give more input. That suppose something is missing from that law, they will give very valuable input. And therefore, in addition, there have been number of judicial pronouncements on labor laws, which have helped to arrive at a better interpretation of these laws and at times given a new direction to their implementation. Like Gammon India, which has given a very good discussion on Contract Labor Act, on applicability, because this Gammon India work was going on prior to commencement of that act, and therefore they challenge in the court that this law will create hurdle for us. So the court has given explained very elaborately how it is going to useful to the workers, how that it going to protect the interest of the workers. Then Steel Authority of India is a recent judgment of 2001, which has cleared the doubt of appropriate government, because you know appropriate government definition is the one definition which is having very different views even in judiciary. One judgment will come thereafter, after 5-10 years another judgment will come. So this Steel Authority of India has given a very good judgment. That Steel Authority of India, though by name you will feel that it is a Government of India company, but court has given a verdict that appropriate government is a state government, though it looks like under control of central government, because by name it is Steel Authority of India Limited. But court has explained that because it is an independent company, board of directors are independent power to take their own decision, and therefore it is not buyer under the authority of the central government. That what is buyer under the authority of central government is well explained in this this judgment. Then another judgment of Supreme Court in the state of Karnataka and Umadevi. This is very much important because you know that there are contract labor system in all government departments, in private offices. So this Umadevi case is of a medical some supporting staff in medical branch. So the contract laborers in many government departments, they are working for 10 years, 15 years, and many of them are going to the court for regularization of their employment. So in Umadevi judgment, the court has explained that when government recruitment is there, there is a written exam, there is a qualification, there is a age limit, there is a quota of reservations. But when they are recruited through contractor is not looking into the education qualification so strictly, then reservation is not at all considered. So if all these workers recruited through contractors are taken as a regular workers, then the entire process of government recruitment will be bypassed and it will be treated as a backdoor entry. Therefore, Umadevi judgment has given guidelines, and they have restricted the employment of regular employees through backdoor. But they have told that opportunity should be given to them if they are within that parameters. Then very important case of Asiad case, it is well known, the People's Union for Democratic Rights versus Union of India. It was the case when first Asiad Games were conducted in Delhi in 1981 and 82. So there were so many constructions were going on in Delhi. Like Indraprastha Stadium was constructed at that point of time, and so many colonies were constructed for the residence of that players. They were about to come from all over India, all over the world. So that time, many contract laborers were engaged in construction activities and other activities. So one PIL was filed by this People's Union for Democratic Rights, is an NGO. They filed a PIL in the Supreme Court stating that no labor law is followed in this construction work and activities. So this is very good judgment. Anybody is having interest in labor laws, they should read the judgment. This judgment has clarified how these labor laws are in consonance with the provisions of our constitution and why these labor laws are important. So this is also a very good piece of judgment. So everybody should read it. Then workman represented by Secretary versus Management Director was Brett. This is under Minimum Wage Act. This judgment has given a guideline how to fix minimum wages, because we know government is fixing some minimum wages. They will make 300 rupees per day, sometimes 400 rupees per day. But what is the basis for that? There is a procedure that for fixing every minimum wages, there are two methods. Either government will constitute a committee and committee will call for the comments, and then they will, otherwise government will issue notification, ask for the comments of the interested parties, and they will fix. But what is the basis to decide what should be the contents of the minimum wages? So this judgment has given that how much cloth is required to a family of 4 people. Then how much that calories intake should be given to that family. 4 or 5 items they have given, and that's why this judgment is very good, and they have given direction to the Minimum Wages Act, which was not an earlier the base for fixing minimum wages. So this judgment has given a base to fix minimum wages. Then constitutional framework. Under the Constitution of India, labor is a subject of the concurrent list. where both the central and state government are competent to enact legislation. As a result, a large number of labor laws have been enacted catering to different aspects of labor, namely occupational health, safety, employment, training of apprentice, fixation, review and revision of minimum wages, mode of payment of wages, payment of compensation to workmen who suffer injuries as a result of accident or causing death or disablement, bonded labor, contract labor, woman labor, child labor, resolution and adjudication of industrial dispute, provisions of social security such as provident fund, employee state insurance, gratuity, then bonus, working condition of certain specific categories of women such as plantation labor, BD workers, etc. So this we are having labor laws for all these things. So this is how we have 44 labor legislations which are categories as follows. Labor laws enacted and enforced by central government. Some labor laws are enacted by parliament and enforced also by the, like in earlier slide we have seen, the labor is in concurrent list. So the implementation machinery also, there are central government officers as well as state government officers. Mostly, generally people are knowing only state government department in the labor. Even if Pune, if you will ask, where is the labor commissioner office? Everybody will tell you the Shivaji Nagar. But there is another office of central government near cantonment, Pune cantonment building. It is called Golibar Maidan on Shankar Shet Road. There is a central government office, but it is a small office, not known to many because many people are not having contact with that office. That will come further on the definition of appropriate government. Then you will come to know the difference. So there are labor laws enacted by parliament and only implemented by central government offices, central government department. That is ESIC. You know that all central government ESIC officers are recruited through UPSC. Some are clerical from Staff Selection Commission. So it is only central government office. Provident Fund, it is also a central government, purely central government office. Then dock workers. Mines Act is also implemented by only Labor Department of central government, as well as there is a DG mines, mine safety. That is also central government department. Then iron ore mines, manganese ore mines, this all welfare cess, because the government is collecting cess from the tonnage, whatever the production of the iron ore or that mica, so limestone. So this whatever the companies are producing, on that production government imposing some cess. So government collecting revenue, and that revenue is spent for the welfare of the mining workers. So there is another department of central government from our ministry only, labor ministry only, but it is called welfare wing. Then BD workers welfare cess. So this is also this cess. BD for BD workers minimum wages are fixed by state government, but this cess for because there are many employers in BD field. You know the Sambhaji BD is very famous. So there are so many BD brands. So these brands, the owners are giving some cess to the central government department, that is welfare department, and then that cess is spent on the BD workers welfare. In Solapur, it is a great example. There is one hospital for BD workers, as well as now one big housing colony has come up. With this fund accumulated at our welfare department, so they constructed a very big housing colony for BD workers. So now many BD workers got their own house. So government, I think, charged some 40,000 from them, and 1,50,000 was the subsidy given. So likewise, this cess fund is implemented for the welfare of the workers. Then Senior Workers Welfare Cess Act. The senior workers welfare is required not for the Salman Khan or Shah Rukh Khan. It is required for the workers who are setting that set. There are so many work in the film. We only see the 3 hours film. We enjoy the hero, heroine fighting, villain, everything. But the efforts of the workers who have spent a lot of amount of time and their effort, so they are not seen on the screen. So all these workers, for their welfare, there is a hospital in Mumbai, Goregaon, which is only for the senior workers. So these are the welfare cess funds. And labor laws enacted by central and enforced by both central and state government. Child labor act. Child labor act can be implemented by state government officer as well as central government. Building and other construction workers act also implemented by both. So contract labor act, equal remuneration act, industrial dispute act,
ऐसे
industrial
टाइम पास
employment
कर रहे थे
Tribunal
सर.
Act, hello, then labor laws, then maternity
Please
benefit,
mute
minimum wages,
mute
payment
your
of
mic.
bonus, hello, payment of gratuity act, payment of wages. I will now explain that why this act is implemented by both the government. Suppose one DY Patil hospital's construction building is going on. Then there is a definition under Contract Labor Act or Building Other Construction Act, appropriate government. The appropriate government will explain you which government will be appropriate government, central or state. That means which labor department will come and inspect the site. Suppose airport construction is going on. Then under appropriate government definition under Industrial Dispute Act, you will find that for air transport services, central government is the appropriate government. So that's why this both as state as well as central government officers will have the control or jurisdiction over that establishment. That's why the definition of appropriate government is explained in all these acts. And that's why it is implemented by state government as well as central government. Then labor laws enacted by central government and enforced by state government. So these labor laws like Factories Act, everybody knows Factories Act, Trade Union Act, because all unions are to be get registered themselves. So all these acts are implemented exclusively by state labor department. Like Factories Act, there is no central government officer will go into the factory and conduct inspection, because factory inspectors are appointed by the respective state government. Like trade union, if you are having any trade union, even in central government establishment, that union has to be registered with the state labor department. They cannot register with the central government. There is a confusion among many people. If the union is having branches in more than one state, so whether that union has to go and register themselves with the central government? No. Registration is being done only with the state government. Like Shivaji Nagar office, that one officer is nominated at the rank of Assistant Labor Commissioner as Registrar of Trade Union. He is having his own staff. So they will collect the application with the constitution of the union, some registration fees, and they will issue registration certificate to the union having the registration number and date. That has to be, then union has to file annual return. So all these things connected with the trade union registration are being done by the state labor department. Then implementing machinery. So I was explaining you that you know that labor laws are there, but many people are not aware how it is implemented and who is the person who is going to implement, from where they are coming. So that's why this implementing machinery, like central government machinery was Chief Labor Commissioner Organization was set up in 1945 on the recommendation of the Royal Commission on Labor as a specialized agency for prevention and settlement of industrial dispute, then enforcement of labor laws, promotion of labor welfare in respect of industries and undertaking falling in the central sphere. So this Chief Labor Commissioner was appointed only for the industries which are coming under the control of the central government. You know that 1945 means after Second World War, there was a upsurge in union activities also. ITAC was established in 1920. So all over world, the workers were uniting and they were started demanding their own rights, and strikes were going on. So government thought of making one specialized agency for conciliation and settlement of the disputes, and also for promoting the labor welfare. Then structure of State Labor Department of Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, the labor department is headed by Commissioner of Labor. Then mostly is IS sitting at Mumbai. Then additional Commissioner of Labor at all district places. Under them that there are Deputy Commissioner of Labor, Assistant Commissioner of Labor, Government Labor Officer, Shop Inspector, Minimum Wage Inspector. So this from Assistant Labor Commissioner onward, mostly they visit to the site and conduct the inspection. From Assistant Labor Commissioner to above, they are conciliation officers also. Then in central government, the Chief Labor Commissioner is sitting at Delhi. Additional Chief Labor Commissioner, there are 2 posts, they are also at Delhi. Deputy Chief Labor Commissioners are in mostly state headquarters. Then regional labor commissioners are like Pune is headed by regional labor commissioner. Then assistant, these figures what I have mentioned aside, that the number of officers, additional chief labor commissioners in all over India only 2. Deputy chief labor commissioners are 57. Regional labor commissioners are 115. So these are the number of posts. Suppose somebody want to apply for this post. So he should come to know that how many posts are there. So he will make his own preparation in that way, and he will try to get selected in that post, because many LLB students are they can apply and they can get selected. And then another wing, what I was explaining about the CES, this is also Central Department Welfare Wing. Their duty was to collect CES from this organization like BD employers, mine employers, cine producers. So they are collecting the CES and they are distributing that CES by way of scholarship, housing, medical facilities. And for doing all this implementation, this assistant welfare commissioner, welfare administrator, and assistant welfare administrators with their staff. So these are the structure of the implementing machinery. Then welfare officers in various central government factories, like now I am posted in a ordnance depot. So there are government companies or factories which are owned by government, like army having many, you know, that ammunition factories, ordnance factories. So these are government factories. So they are not recruiting their own welfare officer as provided under Factories Act. So they are taking from the Ministry of Labor their officers on deputation, and they are posted as a welfare officer in the factory. Then there are also labor laws enacted and enforced by various state government which apply to respective states. Like Shop Act is only implemented for that particular state. Then Maharashtra private security guards, there is a act in Maharashtra and Maharashtra and Kerala, they are having this act, which is we will not find in any other state. Then MRP Pulp Act, that everybody has heard about it. So it is also in Maharashtra Special Act. So these are some different kind of acts. That's why I explained what are the central act, what are state act, what are the specifically state acts. Now, how this machinery is implementing these labor laws. First is the inspection. You know that labor inspector goes to many places and do the inspection. So how is going to do inspection? Once, because every labor inspector's area is demarcated by his commissioner. So that area is that is notified. Then in Act, there is a section, if you go look at the Contract Labor Act, section 28, minimum section 19, there is in law, there is a definition that one clause for inspector with the powers of inspector. He can enter at any convenient place, any working time, and he can enter into any premises, and he can interrogate any worker who is related to that establishment. He can check their records. That all I explain in that definition of inspector and the duties of inspector. So he will go to the site. Suppose there is a construction is going on. He will go, he'll ask who is the manager there, where is the office, site office. Then he will check their record. He will go to the workers also. He will ask them what are their working hours, whether they are getting wages or not, whether they are getting weekly off. Then he will note down everything. He will take workers' statement and he will take their signature, thumb impression, then some witnesses. So all this Panchanama he will do there on the work site, and then he will issue, suppose there are some observations, some non-compliance, he will issue that notice, show cause notice to the employer. So this is the way the inspector has to conduct inspection. That's what I explained you. Prepare inspection note Panchanama and is given to the representative of the employer, and also sending notice to the sometime to the senior officer, because they should know what is going on at the site. So the employer, after getting that notice, what employer has to do? Employer has to immediately see what are the things as observed, and they have to comply If it is not compliant, suppose one notice board is required to be displayed, it is not there. That notice, in that notice, suppose it has come that you are not displayed the notice. So he has to display the notice, and then copy has to be sent to the inspector along with the reply. If the reply is found satisfactory, report can be closed after verification that whether you have given reply correctly or not. Again, that officer will come, will see, okay, notice board is displayed. He will send a remark that file may be closed. If suppose the reply is not received at all, or reply received is not correct, then that inspector can file prosecution against the employer before judicial magistrate first class, and whatever the proceedings are under CRPC, because under 200 they have to court has to verify the documents and then issue summons. So all this process is under CRPC because there is a penalty and imprisonment provided in the act, and for non-implement. That's why it is not under civil procedure code, but it is under criminal procedure code. Then licensing and registration of establishment. You know that for provident fund, if you want to deposit provident fund for your worker, they will ask first employer to take their registration. Then workers are also to be registered. So ESI also, same thing, employer should get himself registered. Then workers are to be get as a IP, then insured person. Then Shop Act also you need a license. Contract Labor Act also there is a license and registration of principal employer. Interstate migrant workmen also there is a registration of principal employer as well as license for the contractor. In building and other construction workers, only contractor has to take registration. There is no requirement to take registration by the principal employer. So what is the principal employer and what is the contractor? That also I will explain, because I explained that Contract Labor Act provides one registration to be taken by principal employer. Principal employer is the organization who is giving work to the contractor. Like when I entered, there is a security workers are there. So if the security workers are more than 20 in central government and more than 15 state government, then suppose there are more than 50 security guards, this college must have taken registration from the state government, because for college state government is the appropriate government under the Contract Labor Act. And contractor has to take labor license. Registration need not have to be renewed, only it has to be get amended whenever there is a change in the contents of the registration certificate. But license has to be renewed after 1 year, because they have mentioned that license is valid up to 1 year from the date of issue. So you have to get it, the contractor has to get it renewed, and he has to apply 30 days prior to the expiry of that license. So these are the licensing provisions under these laws. Then licensing of contractor, I just now explained that contractor also has to take license. For security, there is another act, Private Security Agencies Regulation Act. So contractor has to take a license under this act from police department. The Joint Commissioner of Police is having power to give, because from the security point of view, whatever guards he is employing, whether they are having good character, is there any accused or any convicted person should not get employment. That's why this act is there. So police has to verify the antecedents of all security guards and give permission to engage those guards. There is also in Maharashtra that Security Guard Board Act is there. So that contractor has to get exemption from the guard board to employ this security guards, private security guards. Otherwise in Maharashtra, actually that provision was made to take all security guards only from the Security Guard Board. But Security Guard Board is not able to provide security guards to all institutions. So they have given that one via media, get that exemption and you employ. Then Industrial Dispute Act is very very important act for all industries, because all industries there is a workman, there is a management, and always there is some conflict between management and workers on some condition of service, some benefits. So it is always there. It is obvious that workers are going to aspire for the better working condition, better wages. So, and management will try to save the cost. So there is always conflict between them. And that conflict should not affect on the manufacturing process and the production of the company, or if it is a service provider company, it should not affect on their services. So there are authorities made under the act to settle down the dispute, settle down the conflict. It is one way of conflict management. See, works committee. Works committee is to be elected. There are 10 members to be elected from workers and 10 members from the management. So there is a election after every 2 years. So there are maybe 2-3 unions. So they will have their own candidates, and those who are elected will be member of the works committee for 2 years. And this works committee will look into the day-to-day functions of the organization. Suppose they want canteen to be improved, works committee will go and give demand to the management. No, there is the canteen to be improved from hygiene as well as quality of food. So the works committee will try to dissolve the local issues. They will try to contain the unrest among the worker. So that's why this works committee is very much important from the point of view of making peace at floor level. Then suppose that some issue is erupted and it is not settled at works committee level, then where they should go? Then they will go to the conciliation officer. So who is conciliation officer? I explained that assistant labor commissioner, deputy chief labor commissioner, or deputy commissioner in state or central, all officers above assistant labor commissioners are notified as conciliation officers under Industrial Dispute Act. So that union will make a complaint to the conciliation officer. No, this management is not doing all these things. We are repeatedly requesting, but they are not listening to us. So you call them for the meeting, or otherwise we will go on strike. So the conciliation officer will call management as well as union, and they will that officer will listen to both the sides and will try to give some solutions as per the provisions of the law. What law says, what should be provided, what should not be provided, what cannot be compelled on the management to provide, but to restore the peace in the company. If suppose they demanded wage rise, there is a minimum wage of 500 rupees, union will demand 600 rupees. So if management is not listening, they will go to conciliation officer. They are making so much of profit and they are not increasing our wages. So then there can be a settlement. Okay, 500 is minimum wages. Union has demanded 600. Okay, the settlement can be done at 575 rupees. It is possible. Or there are many. Some bus service is not there. Some recreational facilities are not there. Medical facilities not there. So all these issues that can be settled, and settlement can be signed before the conciliation officer. Then court of inquiry. So suppose some issues are there, for that inquiry has to be done by court, because matter is before the court. Court is not able to go and visit at all sites. So they will make some inquiry commission or committee. They will ask some officer to go and investigate and submit report. Then labor courts, everybody knows that somebody is terminated, he goes to labor court. Then tribunal, then national tribunal is such a thing. It is not a permanent setup. It is formed by the government whenever there is an issue of national importance, or any industry having branches in more than one state. If it is that dispute is going to affect many states, then that national tribunal will be constituted temporarily by the government with notification, and it will hear that dispute and give the award. Then conciliation office is having very important role in implementation of majority provisions of the act. All the officers that I explained, that they can hear the dispute and call the parties. If the dispute is not resolved, that's why it explains settlement. Suppose settlement is not done, management is also adamant, workers are also adamant, they don't want to come to any conclusion, they don't want to settle the issue before the conciliation officer. Then conciliation officer will close the conciliation and he will record a failure report, and he will send report to the ministry. In central government establishment, it goes to Minister of Labor and Employment. In Maharashtra, it is going to the Labor Ministry of Mantralaya. Then there are officers, they will scrutinize that report, and if they found there is a merit in the dispute, Yes, they can send it to the labor court. Then labor court will, they will send the labor court with terms of reference. What court has to decide? It is not that vague. They will not just send it as a postman, but they will send it with the terms of reference. And that labor court only has to adjudicate only on the terms of reference. Then on reference made to the labor court, the court asks parties to submit their statement of claim and hears the parties and passing an award either in favor of the workman or dismiss the application. Suppose workman has that reference has done, but they find there is no merit in the demand of the union. So the court can even dismiss that application and the aggrieved party can appeal in the High Court. What is that whatever the order passed by the tribunal or labor court, it's called award. So award means an interim or final determination of any industrial dispute or any question relating thereto by labor court, industrial tribunal or national tribunal, includes an arbitration award. Sometime in conciliation, we are as a conciliation officer, we are giving an option to the parties. Suppose if you don't want to settle before me, okay, I'm giving you option. You decide any arbitrator. You go to the arbitrator, then we'll notify about that arbitrator, and that when whatever the arbitrator gives you the award, that also can be implemented through labor department. Then prosecution of employer for non-implementation of award. Suppose court has given an order to reinstate one fellow because court has observed that after hearing the parties that he was illegally dismissed. No principle of natural justice were followed, no proper inquiry was conducted, and therefore his termination was not legal. So court will give our direction to the employer to reinstate within 1 month with full back wages. That order goes to the management. Management will feel okay, will not implement. So, and they will not make appeal also sometime. It has happened in mostly in government organization because officers are changes. So the whatever is pending may not be knowing to the incumbent. So it happened. So award is not implemented within 30 days from the day of publication because there is a limit, time limit for implementation. Any award passed by the tribunal will go to the ministry for publication in the official gazette. That award entire order will be published. And after publication of that, after 30 days from that publication, it has to be implemented. Within 30, suppose within 30 days it is not implemented, then labor commissioner will issue show cause notice to the management, the concerned officer by name. And if it is not implemented despite that show cause notice, the prosecution can be filed before the judicial magistrate by that labor commissioner against the management, and the responsible person may be managing director. And the court will give that imprisonment, 6 months imprisonment, and a fine of 200 rupees per day if the breach is continuing, it is not implemented. That commencement of award, I told you that just now, that after expiry of the 30 days from the date of its publication, it has to be published in the official gazette. Then as per section 2K of ID Act, what is industrial dispute? So I will give you that, I will first read that what is the definition. Industrial dispute means any dispute or difference between employers and employers. There can be dispute between two owners of the same industry. So that also can harm the manufacturing process. Suppose one supplier is having some differences and is not submitting raw material. So that difference also can be heard by the conciliation officer because it is affecting the industry. Between employers and workmen, that is very plain, that workers and management. Then between workmen and workmen, there are two unions. They are fighting with each other for some concession given to one union and not given to other union, like that. So then it should be connected with employment and non-employment, or the terms of employment, or with the condition of labor of any person. So conciliation officer will entertain industrial dispute only if it is related to all these things. I'll give you an example. So for explaining it in a better way. I was posted in Cochin as assistant labor commissioner, and you know that Kerala, where there are more strikes in that state, So for small reason also they will go on a strike. So at one day at 7 o'clock, I got a call from the Indian Oil LPG plant was there. So the manager contacted me, sir, from first shift, the strike is going on in our industry and we are not able to supply LPG to many places if the strike continues. Then I called the parties in my office at around 10 o'clock, and because first we have to issue notice. But when there is an emergency, we are calling parties to our office and issuing notice then and there and taking acknowledgement, and we are conducting when there is a strike. Immediately we have to conduct conciliation. We cannot delay it. So I call the parties, I call the union management, I ask what is the issue, why you have gone on strike. So workers were telling that this contractor, new contractor has come and is not filling up that our diesel tank of the truck full. We want that tank should be full in the morning whenever we start our duty. Then only we'll take the vehicle to the destination. So I thought there may be shortage of diesel and that's why these people have raised a genuine issue. So I asked that at how many times it has happened that your truck or lorry has stopped in between because of shortage of diesel. So they told no, it has not happened any time. Then if it has not happened, that means he is giving you sufficient diesel. Then why you are resorting to strike? So they told no, earlier contractor is to give that full tank of diesel and this contractor is not doing it. So I asked contractor, what is the problem? He told, sir, these people are taking out the diesel, selling at some villages. And that's why when I took this work with me, I changed the tanks of entire trucks and I put a mesh, small jali inside the tank. That's why they are not able to take out the diesel from the tank. So they are agreed with that. And that's why they demanded this and they stopped the work. Then I explained to the union, that worker, see, your dispute is not in the definition of this industrial dispute. It is not connected with your working conditions. It is not connected with your employment or non-employment. Nobody has been removed from the job. It is not your terms of employment. Terms of employments are not that diesel should be filled in the tank. So I closed the dispute then and there. But they have not stopped there. They went to that strike was going on for 1 month. They went to the collector, minister, everybody asked us to interfere, but we told our inability. We cannot do anything because this is not related to employment. And if we start encouraging all these things, then it will be headache for us and it will be unending process. For everything we have to intervene because we have explained what is legal and what is illegal to the union. Now it is up to the union and up to the management to see that how to resolve this issue. It is beyond the powers of the labor department. So why I explain this example, to know that what is industrial dispute. A conciliation officer, before conducting conciliation, he will see whether it is an industrial dispute or not. Then only he will spend his time. Then what is industry? Suppose whether it is an industry, then only industrial dispute will come. So industry means any business, trade, undertaking, manufacturing or calling of employers, including calling service, that handicraft like our Khadi in Gramodyog Bhandar is also industry. Then industrial occupation or avocation of workmen, that means calling for workers for some, even you are having some hobby, some aviation clubs are there. So workers are employed there. So they are also workmen. So that is also industry. One Supreme Court judgment has come, even in Tirupati, the laddu making of prasad is also industry. So if the workers of that laddu making workers are having some dispute, that can be heard as a industrial dispute. But as a temple devasthan will not come as an industry. So what is strike? Because mostly we know that why this dispute leads to strike. So strike means a cessation of work by a body of persons employed in an industry acting in combination or a concerted refusal or refusal under a common understanding of any number of persons who are or have been so employed to continue to work or to accept employment. The workers are accepted for employment. They have to continue to the work. But suppose they are having some dispute So a body of persons like union or some workers commonly come together and refuse work. So all these things are coming under the definition of the strike. So for strike, there are provisions under the Industrial Act. They cannot go on strike. The flash strikes are there, but they are mostly resolved within 1 hour or 2 hours. So that is not having much effect. But if union want to go on strike, well planned, they have to give notice. It is under section 20 and 23 of the Industrial Dispute Act. If it is a public utility service, like airlines is a public utility service, defense production is a public utility service, all these fuel supplier companies are public utility service. If any union in public utility service want to go on strike, they have to give notice of 6 weeks. But for other industries, it is only 14 days. So that notice should be given to the management and copied to the labor department. So labor, on receipt of that strike notice, labor department will become active and they will call the unions for conciliation, for discussion, and they will try to resolve the issue and the work. They will try to avoid the strike. Then workman, who that Industrial Dispute Act, who can raise the dispute? Dispute can be raised only by the workman. That workman who is employed in manuals, unskilled, skilled, technical, operational, clerical, or supervisory work. So this shows that any managerial category or supervisory category will not come under the definition of workman. So suppose a assistant manager has been removed by the company with 1 month notice or short notice. He cannot raise the industrial dispute under Industrial Dispute Act. He cannot go to labor court. He has to go to civil court if his appointment letter, there are some condition, it is violated, then he can challenge that conditions in the civil court. But he cannot get relief from the Industrial Dispute Act. That's why you will find in private companies, even person is doing clerical work, but he will be named as executive manager like that. But there are Supreme Court judgments which says that not by nomenclature of the post, but from the nature of work, what the person actually doing, whether he is sanctioning leave of any person, whether he is having actually supervising any work, then only that worker, if he is supervising, then only is excluded from the definition of the workman under Industrial Dispute Act. But if that is a management to avoid that something, that privilege, if they made his manager, so that will not survive before the court. Layoff. Some like workers are going for strike, employers are going for layoff. Suppose there is like the corona time, many companies have laid off the workers. They told there is no work. Whatever we have manufactured, the stocks are lying in the godown. So we don't want to run our company. We are not able to pay you the wages. So there is a provision of layoff, but in layoff also they have to pay their wages. They cannot terminate. This worker's claim is there. Temporarily they will be kept away from the employment. Then retrenchment is the further stage. Suppose the company want to, they are not able to continue the worker, even by layoff also, it is not feasible. Sorry, one urgent call I am taking. Hello. हाँ बोल. हाँ केले. हो जरा मी मीटिंग मध्ये लवकर सांग, काही प्रॉब्लेम नाही ना. So retrenchment is further stage after layoff. Suppose workers are retrenched. So then what is not retrenchment? If they are taking voluntary retirement. Many companies have done this to avoid retrenchment compensation. They have told people to take voluntary retirement. They have given some compensation. Then retirement on superannuation. Suppose person has become 60 years old or 58 years old. He is not called as a retrench. Then termination of service of the workman as a result of non-renewal of contract of employment between employer and the workman concerned. Now you must be, you are aware that there is a now fixed term employment. There is one term as now introduced by the Industrial Dispute Act also and Standing Order Act also. So fixed term employment, you are having contract with the employer for 2 years. So after 2 years, it is bound to complete. So it will not call as a retrenchment. Then termination of workman on the ground of continuous ill health. Many people are having health problems, so they will be terminated if they are not willing to take voluntary retirement. So these are not called retrenchment. But retrenchment means any termination by employer of the service of the workman for any reason whatsoever, otherwise than a punishment inflicted by way of discipline action. So I told you that people are not required, business has gone down. So management will try to retrench the workers, and they will give a compensation. There is a compensation of 15 days wages for completed years of service. For 1 year, the 15 days wages, that is gross wages, that person will get as a retrenchment compensation. Then that notice pay will be there, and for after retrenchment also there is one, they have to maintain one register. So if suppose that employer got enough business, he can again give preference to this retrenched worker, so they will get back the employment. Then settlement between the conciliation officer is the settlements means settlement arrived in the course of conciliation proceedings, including written agreement between employer and worker. Course of conciliation means what? Sometimes the union management will come together, sit together, and they can also have a agreement, one settlement, that is called settlement. There is a pro forma of settlement, and if the settlement is not implemented, again the labor department can take action against the management. That's why this settlement before conciliation officer is very much important. Then appropriate government, I explained you that central government is appropriate government for railway, banks, petroleum, airlines, major port, cantonment boards. Mostly the company is owned by the central government, and some sectors are private also, like airlines are private airlines. But central government is appropriate government under Industrial Dispute Act and Bonus Act, Standing Order Act, but not in Minimum Wages Act. The important provisions of other labor laws on wages, bonus, and gratuity and working conditions. So minimum wages act is one of the very important labor laws, which is applicable even for one worker. If you are employed one worker, only for the scheduled employment, because minimum wage act is not applicable universally to all workers. There are scheduled, that is, there are list of employments. In central government, it's very limited. Only construction, sweeping, cleaning, watch and ward, loading, unloading, mining activities, and agriculture activities. But state government, it's a huge. In Maharashtra, there are 67 scheduled employments for which Maharashtra government has fixed minimum wages, and they are declaring special allowance every 6 months. So what the minimum wages is always having some components. It's a basic wage, VD or special allowance that is declared once in 6 months. Then in Maharashtra, HR is also part of minimum wages, and any other allowance specified by the appropriate government, which will be included in wages. So if you having any grievance of non getting wages, then only that particular component will be looked into. So this revision of VDA, what I was explaining, the central government is declaring, and some state government are declaring DA in April and October every year. That is DA on minimum wages. Suppose minimum wages is 300, DA may be another 100 rupees, and it will be increased by 10 rupees, 20 rupees per day, like that. In Maharashtra and many states, it is declared in January and July, and it is calculated on the basis of consumer price index, because it has happened in 2019. Consumer price index was not increased, and therefore Maharashtra government and even central government has not increased DA of the workers. So I have written one letter to the ministry that when officers DA, government officer DA is increased during that period, why not the DA of the workers is increased? So they were not having any answer. They told, okay, we will take into consideration, and in future we will at least increase some DA, even though there is no increase in the consumer price index. So it happens sometimes that officers sitting at the headquarters, they are not applying their mind. They will only go from the figures. But it is a common sense that when he himself is getting DA, suppose there is a DA from January to July, he is telling no, consumer price index is not increased. Then why the officers or staff of central government, state government has got the DA. But poor workers, unorganized workers, their DA you are not increased even by single rupee. So this is sometimes the government is working without any humanitarian approach. So now we have decided, we have seen the what is minimum wages and what are the components. So suppose one construction work is going on, or suppose your security guard is not getting minimum wages, then where he has to go? So he has to approach to the labor department. Either labor inspector will come and during inspection he will detect less payment and he will file claim case before the appropriate authority. In central government, regional labor commissioner is the authority before whom that claim case has to be filed. There is a pro forma of filing claim case and you have to attach the documents like worker statement, then wage sheets copy, how much they are actually getting, and their statement. Then that authority will issue notice to parties. They will be called for hearing, and after hearing, the authority will pass an order. So authority will pass an order to pay difference of wages as well as compensation. So for less payment of wages, the compensation is up to 10 times of the difference of wages. But authority will not impose 10 times. They will impose 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, depending upon the period and quantum of amount. Then for overtime also, suppose somebody is not getting overtime, he also can file claim before the labor commissioner. And that for OT only, compensation is only 10 rupees per wage period. Wage period means when the worker is getting wages. Some workers are getting wages weekly, some are getting fortnightly, some are getting monthly. So suppose that worker has not got overtime wages for 4 months. So wage period is for 4 months, for 4 wage period. So you'll get compensation of 40 rupees. So these are all old rates. Now the new laws are coming, so they have increased many things. Then the same authority can hear the cases under Payment of Wages Act. See, there is a difference in claim of minimum wages under Act and Payment of Wages Act. Minimum Wages Act, the claim under Minimum Wages Act will be only limited to difference of wages. Suppose somebody is getting less than minimum wages and OT wages. But suppose somebody has not got the wages at all. Suppose wages are not paid by the employer for 3 months. Then that claim cannot be filed under Minimum Wages Act. That will be filed under Payment of Wages Act. Because Payment of Wages Act provides for timely payment of wages. That has to be paid by 7th or by 10th. You know that 7th and 10th. If the workers are less than 1,000, it can be paid before 7th. And the workers are more than 1,000, then it can be paid on 10th day after completion of the wage period. So mostly wage period comes on 31st July. So wages are to be paid by 10th of August. So this is the wage period. And the order of the authority can be challenged in the High Court. So it cannot go to Session Court or something, because these authorities are functioning as a quasi-judicial authority. They are having the power of trial court, judicial magistrate level, and that's why their that order can be challenged only in the High Court. Then applicability. That now we will go to the wages part is over. Now we are looking at the bonus. You know that everybody is getting Diwali bonus. Mostly Maharashtra, they are being paid on Diwali. In Kerala, it is paid on Onam. So this applicability bonus is to every factory and where 20 or more workers are employed. So any industry where 20 or more workers are employed, so they have to pay the bonus. So and what is the eligibility of the worker? He should work with that employer at least for 30 working days in that accounting year. Bonus is always calculated on accounting year from 1st April to 31st March. So minimum bonus is 8.33% of the wages earned during that accounting year, or 100 rupees, whichever is higher. So naturally that always it is more than 100 rupees. Then maximum bonus is 20%. How it is maximum can be decided? Because from the balance sheet there is allocable surplus and available surplus. That chartered accountants report we can find out what is allocable surplus, what is available surplus, and from that you can make that. That's why unions are demanding. They are not.
Story.
They are not happy with the 8.33%. So they will, once they will demand to the labor commissioner, this employer has earned so much of money, he has 20%. So then sometimes settlement can be around
Vidula Parkhi,
for 10% or 15% bonus also.
mute yourself.
Then
Vidula,
the employee can be disqualified from bonus if he is dismissed from service for fraud, riotous or violent behavior inside the establishment, then theft, misappropriation, sabotage of any property. So bonus can be denied to if this worker is falling under this category. Then list of exempted establishment. You know, there are establishments which are exempted from bonus act, even though they are having more than 20 workers, but they are exempted because it was that time assumed that they may not be earning profit, like life insurance. Now you know everybody, LIC is making huge profit, but still the amendment has not been done, so they are enjoying that benefit. Dock workers, then central government, state government offices. These central government, state government offices not covered under bonus act, but they are getting bonus from their own rules and regulations. And there is also limit of pay. Group B, Group A officers are not getting bonus. Then Indian Red Cross Society, that we can understand it is voluntary organization. Then universities and educational institutes. So it is also understood that they may not be earning profit. So it was like that. Hospitals, Chamber of Commerce, social welfare established, not for profit. Then Reserve Bank of India. These are the organizations. When I was posted in Pune, there was a dispute in National Defence Academy. National Defence Academy, they told we are educational institute. We are giving graduation certificate to the students, those who are enrolled in NDA from the JNU, and we are taking the classes. So we are giving that. So that is education. We are not covered under the bonus act. So I told that, see, okay, if they are regular employees of NDA, don't pay. But if they are contract laborers, and we are calculating bonus on the profit and loss of the contractor. So contractor has to pay bonus. He is not educational institute. So that's why you have to reimburse that bonus, and thereafter the NDA agreed, and thereafter they started paying bonus to the contractors, and therefore the contract laborers in NDA are now getting bonus. Then one grape research institute also there on the way to Hadapsar, near Hadapsar. So they were also earlier not willing to give bonus, but with our efforts and intervention, now the workers are getting bonus. Then IFCI, NABARD, UTI, these all institutes, but the contract laborers are getting. Then this bonus is there, those who are working are getting wages and bonus. After termination or resignation, the workers are entitled for gratuity. So gratuity is applicable to all factories, mines, oil field means those who are drilling the oil, like ONGC. Reliance is also having now their rig. Now that you know that one storm has come and some accident took place at a rig. That was a ONGC rig where oil drilling was going on. That is called oil field. Then plantation, port, railway, shop and establishment having 10 or more employees. And so all these are where the Gratuity Act is applicable. So gratuity is payable to an employee after he has rendered continuous service not less than 5 years. Gratuity is payable on superannuation like 58 or 60 retirement, then retirement, voluntary retirement also, resignation, then death and disability due to accident or disease. Then how to calculate the gratuity? Because everybody knows that I am entitled for gratuity, but how to calculate that? So last paid on, that is basic and DA divided by 26 into 15, because 15 days wages for one completed years of service. So 15 and number of years of service. Suppose I have completed 25 years of service and my basic is suppose 1 lakh rupees. So 1 lakh divided by 26 into 15 into 25. So whatever amount comes will be gratuity. Now there is a limit of 20 lakhs. Earlier it from 4 lakhs, then it is increased steadily and now it has reached to 20 lakhs. So employer can give more than 20 lakhs also, but above 20 lakhs is taxable. Up to 20 lakhs it is not taxable. So suppose piece rated worker, then his daily wages has to be computed in the same manner for a period of 3 months. You have to get the average wages. Then for there are some seasonal employment. So for 7 days wages for a season and into number of years of service, 10 years, that means 7 7 days wages into 10 into number of years of service. Then time limit for payment of gratuity. So there is a time limit. Employer has to pay within 30 days the gratuity to the employee. If the employee is not paying, then he has to pay with the simple interest. So the simple interest is generally government is issuing notification what should be the rate of interest. That is the gadget notification is there. Then there is a scope for forfeiture of gratuity. The employer can tell that employee, I will not pay the gratuity. If the worker is falling in this category, if the willful omission and negligence causing damage or loss or destruction to property of employer, then forfeiture will be only to the extent of damage so caused. Then riotous or disorderly behavior or any other violence on his part, an act of employee which constituted moral turpitude in the course of employment. I will give you an example. One force motor is there near to you. So there were some union leaders. They have some morcha inside the factory. They raise slogan against management. So management, when these trade union leaders are retired or some were terminated after conducting inquiry, they were not given the gratuity. Then the trade union leaders went to the labor department and they got the gratuity. But management has exercised their powers to forfeit the gratuity under this clause. Then nomination is very much important. I'm telling you for everybody because you are going to be employed somewhere. Once you employed within 30 days, that once you complete the 1 year of service, you have to, because the gratuity eligibility is after 5 years, but nomination has to be given after 1 year, that who will be your nominee, because absence of nominee will lead to a lot of problems to the family to claim the gratuity, because there sometimes there is a problem between wife and mother. There is a problem between some other will claim, no, I am the successor of this person, so I should get gratuity. So that's why it is always better to fill up that nomination form, that is Form F, and one copy will be given back to the worker. So that for workers' point of view, this nomination is very much important. Then if the employee refused to pay the gratuity to the employee can file an application before the controlling authority, that is again to the regional labor commissioner, assistant labor commissioner. These are the officers declared as a controlling authority under the Gratuity Act to hear the disputes of the gratuity and whether eligibility is there or whether gratuity is paid properly, whether interest is paid or not. All disputes under gratuity will be heard by this controlling authority. There is a provision of appellate authority. I told you that claim hearing can go directly to High Court, but here gratuity, it will go to appellate authority, the one officer above that regional labor commissioner. In central government, it is deputy chief labor commissioner. In state government, it is additional commissioner. So these are the people who can hear the gratuity appeal and they will pass an order. Then gratuity is one benefit after retirement. The another benefit is Provident Fund. The Provident Fund Act is also applicable where 20 or more persons are employed. So for rate of contribution for the Provident Fund is 12% as of now. Workers has to deposit 12% as well as employer also has to deposit 12%. And it is the responsibility of the employer. Even there are contract laborers. It is the responsibility of the principal employers to ensure that Provident Fund of all contract laborers are deposited with the Provident Fund. Otherwise, there will be a notice under 7A of the Provident Fund for recovery of the amount. Then employees pension scheme. So under Provident Fund, whatever the Provident Fund collection they are collecting, they are separating that contribution. Some amount goes to pension fund. So after superannuation or disablement, the workers or his spouse or widow, they will get some pension. So that out of that contribution, out of 12%, 8.33% will go to the pension fund. Then there is a deposit link insurance scheme under Provident Fund itself. So that whatever contribution is also sent to the employee deposit link insurance scheme. So in case of death, that person gets some lump sum amount from the PF department. Then this is the section 7. If any amount is due from the employer, what I told just now, if the contractor, it happens in many places, that contractors are taking the amount from recovering from the worker, also taking from the employer, but not depositing with the PF department. And that contractor goes back, he complete the work, going to other place. Thereafter, the notice comes to the principal employer that your contractor has not deposited, and now you have to pay that amount. And it is binding of the principal employer, because it is a mistake of the principal employer that he has not verified the documents of the contractor while passing the bill. So every authority who is passing the bill of the contractor, they should see the attendance, wage sheet, then PF challan, ESI challan with ECR. ECR is containing the name of the worker, his UN number, then what is the contribution. So you can tally that amount, then only you have to release the payment. Then withdrawal of amount from the fund. So accumulated fund after age of 55 years, the member or on retirement or disability, they can withdraw that whatever accumulated amount in the provident fund, because it is called Bhavishya Nirvaha Nidhi. So at the old age, you require some fund. So that is the provision. It is a social security legislation of the government, and that's why it is beneficial at the old age. ESIC. Here is also that limit is of 21,000 rupees. The worker who is drawing wages up to 21,000 is eligible to get enrolled in ESIC as an insured person. He'll get pre-medical. There are benefits under the ESIC. One is called sickness benefit. Suppose he is ill, he will get treatment or periodical payment. It is called sickness benefit. Then suppose a woman worker is having that taking maternity leave, so she will get some maternity benefit from that ESI scheme. Then disablement benefit because of accident or something. So that then some person has died. So dependents are also getting some benefit. It is called dependents benefit. Then medical treatment of any IP insured person or his dependents is called medical benefit. Then there is one funeral expenses provision is also there. At the time of death of that person, insured person, the family will get some amount for the funeral also. That rate of contribution is now reduced by the government. Now it is only 3 1/4 that percent from the employee, from the employer actually, not employee, and 0.75% from employee. The A is from employer. It is by mistake it is mentioned as employee. Then the another act that is only related to construction activities. So that is mostly related to safety of the workers, because all these labor laws, Contract Labor Act, Minimum Wages Act, all work acts were not taking the care of the safety of the workers. So this new act has come in 1996, which mostly having provisions about safety of the construction workers. Like helmet, safety shoes are the only minor things I have mentioned, but there are many, like cranes. How what should be the criteria for the crane and the crane wire which leave the some article. So there are so many things, even vehicles, that is inspections. So there is the stress was on that safety of the workers. This BOCW Act applies where 10 or more workers are employed, and this act also have a cess provision. Cess provisions means the construction cost, 1% of the construction cost goes to state government as a welfare cess, and from that welfare cess, the state government is providing benefits to the worker. Like Corona time, they have provided 1,500 rupees. It has reached or not, that is a dispute, but but that provision was there. They are being given some school uniform for their children, then reimbursement of school fees, then books, notebooks. Some schemes are there with the state, because this entire cess is implemented by state government, labor department. Then Contract Labor Act, you know that I told you that it is applicable to 20 or more workers for central government, and Maharashtra and many other states, they have made it to if you are having 50 or more contract laborers, then only this act is applicable. Then definition of contractor means who is the contractor? We know that yes, he is a contractor, but what is the legal definition? Legal definition is that means a person who undertake to produce a given result for the other than mere supply of goods. Suppose somebody is AC to this building, he is not a contractor under the Contract Labor Act. But suppose somebody is taken a job of installing that centralized AC, then he is a contractor. So these are the difference between, that's why this definition of contractor make a difference. Only supplier is not a contractor, but who is sending their people to your site and the workers are doing some work in the premises of the principal employer, they are the contractors. Even subcontractors are also contractors. What is subcontractor? Suppose this building construction work is given to one contractor and lift is to be installed in the building. So that contractor who takes the work is not expert in lift installation. So what he will do, he will engage another agency for lift purpose only. So it is called a subcontractor. And for that subcontractor, the principal employer should know that who is the subcontractor. Permission has to be taken by the main contractor from the principal employer to engage that subcontractor. So this is the actual definition of the subcontractor, because many people will not come to know what is why the subcontractor word is mentioned. So whatever the provisions of the act are applicable to contractor all are applicable to the subcontractor. Means suppose contractor has taken a labor license for construction of the building. One company has come to install lift. He is also having 25 people or suppose 60 people in Maharashtra. So for that, he also has to take a labor license, separate labor license. He has to also pay minimum wages. He has to maintain record. So all provisions are applicable to the contractor or applicable to subcontractors also. Then principal employer, I told you that who is giving the work, like government authority or even private authority. In Jewadi, there are many private companies. They are giving work to the contractor for security, housekeeping, data entry operator. So all these companies are, their officers are principal employer. So that they are any person, because they may mention some person, some authority has to be named as a principal employer, and the registration has to be taken from the appropriate government, either state government or central government, for by principal employer and licensed by the contractor. Then who is contract labor? Contract labor is a person who is employed in connection with the worker, in connection with the work of the establishment through a contractor. There should be a contractor in between when that person is employed. If you engage any person directly without any contractor, then he is not a contractor. And that is with or without knowledge of principal employer. Means suppose that security guard, maybe principal is not aware of who is employed. So, but still he is a contract labor. If any wages are not paid, he can complain to the principal employer. Then you cannot tell, I don't know who are you, who employed you. You go to the contractor. Okay, you can take up the work, but you cannot just deny that he is not your labor. That's why this word is very important, with or without knowledge of the principal employer. Then prohibit if you see the name of the Contract Labor Act, it is Contract Labor into bracket Regulation and Abolition Act 1970. So this act, there is a provision of regulation, there is a provision of abolition also. But entire act is for regulation. Only one clause, that is section 10, is only for prohibition. So means what? The appropriate government will form a board or a consultative agency, and they will see whether this process, operation or other work where contract laborers are employed are incidental to or necessary for the industry or business or manufacturing, and which is carried out in the establishment, whether this work is perennial nature, whether it is going on continuously, then whether it is of sufficient duration, whether it is going for 1 year, 2 year, like that, then whether it is done ordinarily through regular workmen in other that establishment and similar establishment. Suppose it is a college, and if all colleges are having permanent workers as a security guard, but this college is having contract labor. So this contract labor or any union can go to labor department and ask for abolition of contract labor system for security guard in so and so college. So that's why these four criteria is there, then only that issue, that union or workman has to demand to the management for regularization, for under this clause. So government will not straight away abolish the contract labor system in this thing. Government will form a body, a committee. Committee will look into the situation, considering these 4 points, will interact with the management, workers, other industries, and then we issue recommendation to the government. Yes, it should be abolished. Then government will issue a notification for abolition of contract labor system in this industry for this work. So after that notification, principal employer cannot employ contract labor in that particular work. So this is the only provision for under Contract Labor Act. Then interstate migrant work. Why this act is important? Because during Corona, you might have seen many people, lakhs of workers were walking on road. Who were they? They all were migrant workers. But the act was very limited. The act was not treating everybody as a migrant worker. We'll come to that. See, this act is applicable to every establishment where only five or more workers are migrant workers are employed. Then act is applicable to employer as well as contractor. Same contract labor and principal employer concept is here also. Then who is interstate migrant workman? See, this definition has created a lot of problem during this Corona. The interstate migrant workman means any person who is recruited by or through a contractor in one state under an agreement or arrangement for employment in an establishment in another state, whether with or without knowledge of the principal employer in relation to such establishment. I'll explain you what is this, why this is creating problem. Suppose D.Y. Patil Institute want to construct this building and they are not getting enough skilled manpower here. They will go to Orissa because high-rise building work is mostly done by Jharkhand people, Orissa people, some West Bengal people. They are expertise people, they can work on the height. So that contractor who is employed by the D.Y. Patil organization to construct a building, that contractor will send his person there in Orissa and they will recruit 25 people from that state. And while employment only, that agent will explain, you are going to be employed in Pune, in Maharashtra, in D.Y. Patil Institute for a certain period of employment days. So are you ready to come? They will come. Then he will bring those all bunch of workers to this particular site. They will work here. They will complete the work here. And out of that 25, many people will leave employment in between and go to another site nearby, going on. With some, suppose that contractor will tell, okay, I will give you 100 rupees more, you come to me. So that worker is an interested migrant workman till the time he is recruited by the contractor of D.Y. Patil in Orissa and employed in D.Y. Patil Institute for this building. If that worker on his own is going for another employment in nearby area, he is not an interested migrant worker. Then he is a normal worker. So this definition has created a problem because when government was trying to calculate, getting the figures, how many interested migrant workers are there in each state. So Labor Department gave the figures, only the contractors who have taken license, that figure only given. This, I'm telling you practically, that implementation of this act is very poor. Many contractors are not taking license under this act. So figures are very less. Maybe from Maharashtra, figure might have gone only 1,000 or 2,000. Whereas even in only Bandra station in Mumbai, we have seen lakhs of workers at one day. So government was criticized that you are not having figures of exact interested migrant workmen. So this is the definition which created a problem. That's why I explained in detail. Then what the benefit the migrant worker are getting? They will get the passbook with photograph from the employer. Then the employment, the passbook will contain his photo, then employment period, rate of wages, mode of payment. Then there is a provision of displacement allowance. That I think it is there. Displacement allowance. Contractor has to pay to every interstate worker at a time of recruitment displacement allowance equal to 50% of monthly wage payable to him, and the amount so paid is not refundable. So whatever the wages are there, so 50% wages has to be paid, monthly wage that he has to pay. Suppose 10,000 is a monthly wage, so 5,000 has to be paid at the time of recruitment. So that amount he can pay to his family and he will come for the work because his family is going to stay at that village. Then journey allowance, he will get journey allowance for to and fro while coming also and while going also. If he is continuing the employment with the same employer, if he live in between and going to other place, he will not get that return journey allowance. He will only get the one side allowance. Then other facilities, you might have seen at construction site, tin sheets are constructed for their residents. Then medical facility has to be provided by the contractor. It is being provided. Suppose somebody gets ill, that there is a nearby doctor, that contractor bear that expenditure also. Then Child Labor Act. Everybody knows that Child Labor Act. If you go to restaurant, there is a board. इथे बाल कामगार काम करत नाहीत. So definitely everybody is aware that we should not employ child labor. So who is child? Child means a person who is below 14 years of age. If a question arises between inspector, because we inspector go to the restaurants or some dhaba, we found that there is a child labor, then that even the child will tell, no, मैं तो 16 साल का हूँ साहब, 18-17 साल का हूँ. तो जब dispute आता है, then we will have to take those people to the civil hospital and identify his age. Then where the child labors are prohibited, there are so many things: transportation of passenger, like railway station, dhabas, the port premises, railway stations. Then selling of firecracker. This is very common. Work related to selling of crackers and fireworks in shops with temporary license. When the Diwali comes, you will find that on open ground, municipality will give temporary license to erect the shops. And in that shop, you many times will find that person from that family will be selling the this firecrackers. I will tell how it is that act is not applicable for that particular boy. Then automobile workshop, handloom, the workshop, you will find many people, child laborers are working. Then dhabas, restaurants, I told, tea shops, many tea shops near hospitals and colleges, you will find tea shops. There may be some boy, we call him Chotu, ek chayla. We are also calling him Chai De Bhai, and he is also serving. So then bidi making, these are all manufacturing process, manufacturing matchbox, explosive, fireworks, soap making, construction work, mine. This section 3 is very important. Section 3 prohibits employment of children in any of the occupation in part A and part B, which I showed you just now. But this proviso, there is a proviso that permits child labor if the process in any workshop is carried on by occupier with the aid of his family or by any school established by or receiving assistance or recognition from the government. I told you that firecracker shop temporarily erected will have a child labor because he is from that family. So it is not prohibited. Like suppose some industry like bidi making is also made at the household. There also the children is supporting, if that it is a family business. If it is a family business and that boy is employed in that family business, then it is not child labor. Then Maternity Benefit Act. It is applicable to all my factory, mines, government organizations, circus. For circus also it is applicable because there are also many female workers. So that the employee has to work at least for 80 days in a period of 12 months to get that benefits under Maternity Benefit Act. Now the government has increased the benefits. Earlier it was 12 weeks. Now it has made 26 weeks. Then medical bonus of 250 if no prenatal or confinement or postnatal care is provided by the employer free of cost. Then nursing breaks of 15 minutes during duration, including extra period depending upon the distance to be covered. Suppose there is a residential quarter nearby So that mother has to go to the house for nursing break, or any crèche is established in the establishment, maybe little bit away from the establishment. So that time has to be also be given for other than 15 minutes. Then protects the, why this labor department or labor inspectors are going fearlessly to any establishment or asking for record. There is a powers given under the act for inspectors, as well as there is a protection given under all act. If you find out, take out any labor law, there is a provision protection under action taken in good faith. In all labor laws, officers are protected. If the labor inspector can work, the labor inspector can work without fear because of the protection provided to him under each labor law. What is mentioned there? No suit, prosecution, or other legal proceedings shall lie against any person for anything which is in good faith done or intended to be done in pursuance of the act or any rule or order made thereunder. Suppose as an inspector, I came to your establishment, I ask you to give some record, I will show my identity card, I will show my jurisdiction, everything. And I think that you are having contract labors. So I am issuing a notice under show cause notice under Contract Labor Act. I feel that from seeing your record that you have violated some provisions. If I filed a prosecution against you in the court, you cannot file any case against me personally for harassing you in the High Court or any civil court. Or you cannot prosecute me in the police with the police that I came and harassed you unless and until I abuse you, I misbehaved with you. So not for implementing labor law, you cannot prosecute me. But you can prosecute me if I misbehaved with you, if I break any other civil law. So if I make any mistake under IPC, or then yes, you can prosecute. But not for, if I just I am conducting inspection, I am prosecuting you under labor laws, you cannot prosecute me. That is the protection given under laws. That's why labor department, labor inspectors can do their work without any fear. So I will give another examples also because the prosecution of officers. See, there are instances. One government department has prosecuted another government department. I'll give you my example. I once prosecuted one Provident Fund commissioner because he has violated the provisions under Contract Labor Act. He has not taken registration, though he employed around 40 data entry operators through contractor, but he has not taken registration under Contract Labor Act. We issued notice, he has not replied, so we filed prosecution against him. So ultimately it was withdrawn with the permission of the government. There is a provision of withdrawal, not in the act, but in the our procedure. If the government officers filing against government officer, we can withdraw after compliance. So he has taken registration, he has complied, then we have withdrawn with the, that time penalty was only he has to deposit 500 rupees as compensation. Now that amount is increased to 5,000 rupees. So these are the, because it was only 1 hour lecture and it was very difficult to include all labor laws in 1 year. So 1 hour. So I have tried my level best to complete it. I don't know, I have not seen the watch, but hopefully I have completed within time. So thank you very much for listening to me, and now for the next program.
Thank you so much, sir. With your permission, we will be moving forward to the question and answer session. So we'll be taking questions simultaneously.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question is, what is the impact of industrial jurisprudence on labor welfare legislation?
See, for labor welfare, there are labor laws. Like Factories Act, there are many provisions for welfare. Like I told you that Building and Other Construction Act is also having welfare clauses. Contract labor is also having that you have to be given latrine, toilet, drinking water, and these are all welfare facilities, and that's why in all factories there is a post under section 49. There is a post of welfare officer. He has to look into the welfare of the worker. He has to put up the proposal to the management for providing welfare amenities. If it is not provided and it is binding, on the management to provide all welfare facilities which are mentioned in the act. Other than act, also you can ask for welfare facilities with your bargaining power of the union. So union can ask anything which is beyond law. So in many ways, like you might have seen the transportation of that bus transportation is provided. The workers are picked from their residence. It is a welfare amenity, and it is not provided in the act, but it is provided in the agreement with the union. So there are and this why the union is having power because of Industrial Dispute Act. If they go on strike, if threaten the strike, management will definitely come to the discussions. So these are the welfare.
Sir, the second question is, what are the authorities set up for the investigation of an industrial dispute?
I told you that conciliation officer. Conciliation officer is the person who has to investigate and settle the dispute. So I told you that the dispute. I gave an example of Kerala, that LPG plant, LPG vehicles strike. So I investigated what is the problem. Why that whatever questions we are asking, sometimes we are going to the site also to find out. I'll give an example of Mumbai Port Trust. There was a dispute. One person with the color blindness. He was diver. Diver means is going into the sea, deep sea, and find out some pipeline leakages. He has to do something underwater. He's a diver. So he was removed from service or something. Then the person came to me. So management was just misguiding conciliation officer by telling, sir, he is having a color blindness. So how he can recognize the signal? So we removed him. Prima facie, we will also believe, yes, he is a color blind. He cannot recognize the signal. So definitely he has to be terminated. So the worker was telling, sir, no, my work is diving work. You just come and see. So we went there and saw that how he's working. So there is a, when he's diving inside, the ropes are also with him. So he has to signal the rope when he has to be taken up. Or whatever the problem, there is some signal of the rope. So there is no question of seeing the color. Signal means we only know red, yellow and green. But this signal was different. So after investigation, we could find that management was wrong and we directed them to reinstate that fellow. So investigation is the authority is a conciliation officer.
So the next question is there any role of alternative dispute resolution techniques in resolving any type of labor dispute?
So the works committee is alternative dispute resolution. Then arbitrator is that another thing. And union and management doing bilaterally. It is also there. Alternatively, they can go to their arbitration or works committee. These are alternative. They need not have to go to conciliation office always. That's why. Then another the provision is grievance redressal committee. It is there in the Act, Industrial Dispute Act. Now in new Act also it will come. Now they are going to make it compulsory. Before coming to the conciliation officer, they should go to grievance redressal committee. Then there are women cell. You know that internal complaint committee for under sexual harassment. So some dispute can be resolved with that particular setup. So no need to always go to labor court or conciliation officer.
So the next question is, what is the difference between individual dispute and industrial dispute, and why when does an individual dispute become an industrial dispute?
So individual dispute, if suppose somebody is transferred from one place to another place, he can raise individual dispute, but that will not be treated as industrial dispute because he is not raising through union. Under Industrial Dispute Act, there is a provision, individual cannot raise a dispute unless he is terminated from the service. He has to, for any breach of condition of service or anything related to that, he has to come through union. So only that individual dispute, if he is terminated, then only he can raise individually. Then that he need not have to go to union. So there is a bar bar in the Industrial Dispute Act, the individual cannot raise a dispute for his own, for other, except termination.
So next question is, if suppose central government undertaking company is not giving gratuity to its retired personnel on time, then what is the line of action to get the gratuity amount?
So for that purpose, there is a DCRG rules. It is a service matter provided a CCS rule, because there are conduct rules, FRSRs are there. So he has to either go to CAT, that is called Central Administrative Tribunal, or he can follow up with the higher ups. Mostly 99% problem is getting solved if if he approach to the higher officer. Only suppose that I told you know that termination on the ground of fraud, forfeiture, like that. So suppose that the forfeiture powers are there, but that can be challenged in the Central Administrative Tribunal.
So the next question is, in case of absence of agreements with migrant workers, how can those workers take action against wrongdoing done by employer?
Just I will again ask your question, but before that, the earlier question he has asked, no, that gratuity. See, from central government point of view, you might have thought only of the person employed only in pure central government. But I'll tell you that Hindustan Antibiotics Limited is a central government company. So the workers of that company, though it is of central government, are not getting gratuity. They can raise dispute under Gratuity Act because they are covered under Gratuity Act. The central government employees who are not covered under central service rules, the workers who are not covered under central service rules can get benefit under Gratuity Act. And those who employ, like suppose I am the central government employee, I will not get gratuity. I cannot raise any claim under Gratuity Act. I have to go through our that departmental hierarchy. Okay, madam, you just please repeat your question.
Yes, sir. The question is, if in case of absence of agreements with migrant workers, how can those workers take action against wrongdoing done by employer?
See, agreement is not required to be written always. Worker has to tell that, because we are as an investigating officer, we are taking statement of the workers. And when there is a question, because if that benefit is not given to the worker, right, he is not given the displacement allowance, because displacement allowance is a benefit. He has not given that journey allowance. So these are the benefits. If any benefit is not given to the worker, the inspector will file prosecution against the contractor before the judicial magistrate. So there is no written agreement is required. Only the statement taken by the inspector, and it is proved before the court with the witness of the worker. Worker has to come to the court. He has to depose before the court, and then court will accept. See, under Indian Evidence Act, any evidence deposed by the court, any evidence deposed by the person in the court is taken as evidence, valid evidence. So it will be considered that yes, there is agreement. He can tell, yes, this fellow, this person told me, and that's why we came, 20 people came together. That is sufficient. No written agreement is required.
Okay, sir, thank you so much. And as we are near the end of today's session, I would take the opportunity and on the behalf of Dr. D.Y. Patil Law College, would like to thank our resource person, Mr. D.S. Jadhav, sir, for his precious time and effort. Thank you so much, sir, for telling us about the practical aspects of labor law. We are surely taking a lot with us. I'll take this moment and would thank the management for their support. Would also like to extend my wholehearted gratitude to our Honorable Principal Ma'am, Dr. Ujjwala Shinde, for her constant support and guidance in organizing such guest lectures, which help us in knowing about the applicability of the various laws. We have been fortunate enough to have such amazingly supportive faculty members. Also, a thanks to Assistant Professor Preeti Pawar Ma'am for arranging today's lecture. Thank you, ma'am. And lastly, I would like to thank the participants for being such supportive and patient listeners. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to Disha, Neil, Aniruddha, and also thanks to Kavale sir and Madhvi madam.
Gmail आले हो?
मित्र आहे
कुणाची? काय नाही आज नाही वर्षाला.
तेव्हा तो हाय त्याचं नाव काशी आहे ना समितीला किती घेतलं होतं